Welcome to Hacking Postgres, a podcast about extensions, extension creators, and other interesting, innovative things in the world of Postgres. I'm Ry Walker, founder of Tembo, a managed Postgres company, and today I'm here with DJ Patil and Ray Lane. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
It's good to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'd love to have you guys start by giving us a quick background. But first, why are you on the podcast with us? You led our Series A. We got to know each other a little bit more over the past few months, and I kind of wanted to record for all posterity. Like why you decided to partner up with us, etc. But for those that don't know you already, maybe. DJ, if you would start like quick background, and then we'll dig deeper as we go through it.
Yeah, well, starting from the most recent fact, I think the most important thing to say is proud investors of Tembo, and really excited to be on the journey with you, Ry, and the rest of the team. It's just been amazing to get to fully appreciate the whole Postgres ecosystem and how pervasive it is and how much opportunity there is ahead. And so I know we'll get a little bit into that, but I'll just start with that. And obviously Ray will be able to talk a lot about the journey of databases over that as the ecosystem has evolved. A little bit about me. I've been able to kind of float between academia, government, and industry, and kind of go back in between those. And so, formally trained as a mathematician, not only did dynamics and chaos theory, but I really got my start at community college, local community college here, before kind of going on that route. I spent a bunch of time working on numerical weather forecasting before transitioning into national security after 9/11 and really working on how to identify threats against the U.S. Spent a bunch of time doing that in different venues around the country and the world, and then transitioned over back to Silicon Valley and really try to figure out how can we use data in the way we were around national security to help out around this Web 2.0, this kind of movement around social networks. And that's really where I landed up at LinkedIn. We coined the term data scientist with the team, but also kind of invented a whole bunch of technology along the way. Part of the ones that people often know about is Kafka, which we turned into a company called Confluent, but there was Azkaban, Voldemort, a whole slew of other technologies around that. Bounced to a couple startups. Relate IQ was part of the one that most people know about. Spent some time at GreatPoint Partners before getting pulled back into the government in a role called the U.S. Chief Data Scientist. And then coming back out of that role after leading things like precision medicine, tailored genomic treatments for President Obama, and a number of national security efforts as well. Got back in the healthcare game and helped get Devoted Health off the ground and left as CTO before joining GreatPoint Ventures, where I got to know Ray and the team, and they kind of said, hey, maybe we should think about really doing this together. And I thought, heck yeah. But of course, Ry, we got to meet a little bit while I was spending time hanging out with Venrock also, and really got to know each other there as you were thinking about your journey here. And so it's been just a joy to kind of continue this phase as we kind of move forward. But
yeah, and I love that we sent you on this like wild goose chase to like understand the current state of Postgres, and that you came out on the positive side of that was really amazing. You guys had a lot of
enthusiastic.
Yeah. So Ray, maybe I know you could probably talk for hours about your background, but yeah.
There are books about Ray.
Let me try to condense it into 2 minutes. Similar to DJ, I'm a mathematician by training, and maybe in a different decade or a different century than DJ. but I after instead of going to graduate school, which I wanted to do, I was looking at the prospect of heading off to Vietnam in those days. That's what young men had to look forward to. And so I did serve my country for 2 years in the U.S. Army in the 1st Infantry Division and during the Vietnam War. And I came back and I decided to go to work, and I went to work for IBM. And that put the corporate bug in me to want to, kind of solve problems and accomplish things inside of a corporate structure. It really was a great home in those days. IBM was a great company. They led the industry. It basically had thwarted all of its competitors in those days, and it was the leader going into the 70s and mid 70s. So we really enjoyed working there. And the guy who hired me into IBM left IBM after 23 years and went to work for a young character by the name of Ross Perot. And he said, "You should come with me." I didn't want to leave the mothership, but when I met Ross Perot, I was hooked. And I left, went to EDS, moved to Texas. I'd never been to Texas before, worked at EDS, and really, really enjoyed getting the IBM out of me and getting the kind of whatever I was going to be into me. I had the opportunity then after EDS to go to Booz Allen because I did not have a graduate degree, or an MBA. I think the chances of me working for a McKinsey or a BCG or a Booz Allen in those days was nil. But I had an opportunity because they needed someone to run the practice, the tech practice, on the western half of the United States. Work in Chicago, but run the West. So I jumped at the chance. I thought it was a great opportunity for a whole bunch of reasons, and spent 12 years at Booz Allen. Ended up running the entire tech practice throughout the world. So it was about a fourth or maybe a third of Booz Allen's business. Ran the tech practice and ran several offices within Booz Allen, and was on the board and executive committee. So I really enjoyed, and I was going to stay there forever because I'd really found a home in Booz Allen. And then Larry Ellison came knocking and said, "We'd like to talk to you about being president of Oracle." And I had to think for a while. I actually had to think because Booz Allen's consulting, even the IT consulting, was done at a fairly high level of the organization. And I'd say, wait, they're in the database business. I'm not sure I'm qualified to run a database company. Yeah. And I spent time with Larry. I spent time with all the executive staff. And then one of the partners that actually worked for me came from Arthur Young, who was at Booz Allen, said, "You know what? Do this and take me with you." And he was right. Unfortunately, he's deceased now, but he was right about the opportunity at the time. In 1991, Oracle hit a wall after going public in 1986. And after 5 or 6 years, it just failed to double like they were used to doing. And everything just kind of came down around them. They weren't serving customers very well. The product didn't really work like it was advertised. It was before Oracle 7. It was Oracle 6 and prior. And so there were just lots of problems at the company. So I looked at it and said, okay, well, maybe I can help. Maybe I can help with the turnaround, and the turnaround would do all sorts of good things. And, well, I way undersized the opportunity. It was a great experience. We got the company actually on its feet, and at least back in a leadership position within a couple of years. And then the rest of that decade was just awesome for growing both the database business, the business applications business, and a whole bunch of other things, the services business that I put this guy I brought from Booz Allen in charge of the services business. And I said, look, if you just grow this to be a couple thousand people, I would be happy. He grew it to be 18,000 people and $3 billion just in the services area. So I left in 2000, largely because the job was done. And now we were looking at what happened next. The bubble had burst. Of course, a lot of Oracle's business was selling picks and shovels for the .com boom, and I looked at what I want to do next, and I had all sorts of opportunities to run big companies, to go to the government, and I chose for my family. I decided that I remarried, had 2 small children, one that was a newborn and one that was 2 years old. And so I said, I needed to do something. I want to stay relevant in the industry. I felt I was kind of one in top 20 in terms of influencers in the industry in Silicon Valley. And I said, what can I do and stay home and not be in Germany when my kids are saying they're playing soccer or something like that. And that turned out to be venture capital. So I became a managing partner at Kleiner Perkins. Did that for 14 years before one of the partners at GreatPoint and myself founded GreatPoint Ventures. And we founded GreatPoint Ventures to be a more operational venture company. For all of us are operators. We've worked at companies or we've been entrepreneurs, and we just feel like we can offer more in terms of operational help to entrepreneurs we invest in. And so that's kind of the credo of the firm and what we've done for the last 8 years.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. You decided to do the Oracle thing right before the dawn of the internet, without probably knowing that era was about to start. Right? It was probably
perfect. Yeah. Timing is everything. And the combination of Booz Allen and Oracle just opened up opportunities. I joined the Carnegie Mellon board back in the 96, 97 timeframe and became chairman of the board of Carnegie Mellon. I became affiliated with HP when they were doing a search for a CEO, which I didn't really want to do at that time. I was still at Oracle. I ended up as chairman of HP later on when they needed a management change. And so I just have been very, very lucky to get all of the opportunities, what seemed like good timing and really fulfilled.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. And I know you guys have obviously been involved with lots of different data related startups, spinning them out of LinkedIn or, investing in them. But I'm curious, like, what's the first database each of you used that you can remember?
With me, it was DB2.
DB2. It's an easy answer, huh? Yeah. DJ's thinking.
Because I was at IBM.
Yeah. So interestingly, because I was trained in scientific computing, I didn't really know what a database was until I got to Silicon Valley and eBay. Yeah. I didn't know what this thing was, but I'd been building effectively databases. I just didn't know that's what they were. I was building elementary things. And, it's kind of like one of these things I was like, why didn't I know about Postgres back then? That would have made my life so much easier on these things. And it was more of that time period. The web was just coming up. So it wasn't like you could find patterns. It wasn't like you could go to a blog and say like, oh, this is how you did it. Maybe you had access to some O'Reilly books. Maybe you kind of got lucky and you ended up at a conference. But if you were in scientific computing, I was doing really high performance computing using supercomputers. Yeah, you didn't actually have access to these things, and so a lot of times we were duplicating what each other were doing for different purposes. And so I remember I had this funny conversation when I got to eBay, and I was like, I don't really know what a database is, and like I just sort of walked me through it, and I was like, that's it. Like that's all we're talking about. Obviously, there's a huge amount of nuance in actually making a good database work and the partitioning and all those type of things. But it's just sort of one of those things where we don't realize like how much technology often gets reinvented or the utility of some of these technologies.
Yeah, the whole concept and utility of a database goes back so far. Even I, can't remember prior to that. But I'll tell you one really quick, funny story. When I did get drafted and went into the Army, everybody goes through basic training. They announced everybody's MOS, your military occupational specialty, and mine turned out to be 11 Bravo, which means you carry a rifle in Vietnam. I said, this cannot be right. This can't be happening to me. So I went down to the captain's office and he explained that my orders were wrong. You're now a 74 Golf, which means you're a systems analyst. I said, I'm not sure which is worse, carrying a rifle or being a systems analyst. I went to Fort Riley, Kansas, and they said, what we use here is Univac single address assembler language. And that was the only time other than Fortran, the only time I programmed without a database. So the whole utility of having a database is like built in. Yeah.
All right. So, scaling a company, how many people were at Oracle when you started, Ray? Was it 1,000 people already? Was it more than that?
Yes. It was about, let's see, we were about $500-600 million in sales.
Yeah.
Probably 500, 600 people, something like that.
Yeah. So we're going from 20, we're around 25 right now. And it's just like, it's crazy for me to hear you talk about, oh, if you just can build a 2,000 person services team, 18,000, like, was that, I mean, again, like you're kind of in this world of Booz Allen, where big employee counts existed. And for someone like me, taking a startup from seed stage to something even close to that is just feels like a crazy long journey. How long had Oracle been around before you joined? Was it public in 86?
Oracle was founded in 1978, the same year Microsoft was founded, and then it existed. It started out as RSI, Relational Systems Inc., and then the name Oracle came from a project that Oracle was doing for the federal government.
Oh,
that's a great name. That was a great name. And then Oracle went public in 1986 and then had the downturn in 1991. They missed the first quarter in 91, and it was trouble. We actually very quickly were running out of cash. So that's kind of the history. But this is a really interesting question that I probably have a surprising answer for you. Because when I came to talk to all the executives of Oracle in beginning in 1992, and talk about whether I was qualified to do this. Larry was very quick. He's very decisive. And Larry said, we had a 2-hour meeting. He said, "You're the guy. I won't say no, or I won't take no for an answer. I want you to sign up before you get on the plane and go back." And I said, "Larry, this will take me 2 to 3 months to make this decision. Leaving Booz Allen, of which I thought I could actually be the managing partner of Booz Allen, leaving that career, leaving Dallas, moving my family, all of that is going to be a complicated decision." And only one guy, Larry's co-founder, asked the question, he's never run anything bigger than 1,000 people.
Yeah.
What makes you think he could run this company? And it was a really good question, and I'm not sure I could answer it. And so as we went along, I developed a philosophy about scale that the more I ran it as a small company, the more it scaled. Now, I had to change people. That's one thing that I signed up for. And so when we had someone running the French company, Oracle France, there was a guy who called himself president of Oracle France, a guy who called himself president of Oracle Germany. These were small businesses that were subsidiaries that grew into, divisions after we bought them. The way Larry thought about the product is, I'll distribute the license for the database. You can buy it from me, and then you distribute it to customers. So he kind of thought of himself as a product company that sold to distributorships that eventually became subsidiaries. And so as I thought about, okay, well, how do we get Europe to be bigger than it is? Because the US we had fixed. We made a lot of changes in people and everything. I tried to grow these presidents of each country into a manager of a larger company. So let's have our services be a worldwide organization. Let's have our education be a worldwide. Let's have our support organization be a worldwide organization. Consulting, a worldwide organization. And these guys essentially would then just be salespeople. They would run sales. Well, of course, they didn't want to do that. Yeah. Therefore, they could not scale it. So you had to get people that came from an environment that says, well, it feels normal to me. In fact, it feels like a promotion if I am senior VP of France.
Yeah. Okay,
running sales in France. Or I'm a senior VP of EMEA or whatever. And so it really just, but I still thought about it as a small company because scale was their responsibility. My responsibility was keep them happy, keep them, if they were qualified to do it. Just like the guy I brought from Booz Allen, he had never run an organization bigger than a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
And he was running an organization of 18,000 people. And so as long as I kept him and answered his concerns and made sure he had the resources he had, you can scale a company. But I think one thing it does require is you have to change people. You have to along the way. And it doesn't say that the current people can't grow into new roles. Of course they can. But you've got to keep feeding a new pipeline of people in that have scale experience.
Yeah, best person for the job at hand, right? Which, if it's a new job in the company, they don't have any recent experience doing that, So,
right.
Yeah, that's great. So, maybe turn a little bit to like why you decided to invest in us, like what the market opportunity you see. Like, I'd love to hear you, DJ, kind of like summarize what you see about Postgres in particular, and maybe our strategy in particular. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So first, I think there's a few things. The first is like, Rye, when we first talked and you're like Postgres, and there have been a bunch bubbling around Postgres and people talking about Postgres as a thing. One of the things that I realize as on the builder side of technology is you don't realize how much Postgres actually exists inside your stack, especially if you've got, a couple dozen developers. And when you pull that back and you look at that and you're like, you do kind of inventory of systems, you're like, whoa, Postgres is everywhere. Yeah. Because if it's kind of like a Phillips screwdriver. It's like, it's in everyone's toolkit. It's like you don't build a toolbox without a Phillips screwdriver. Same way you don't go without Postgres.
Yeah.
And so you find that all these spots where it's being used, and then as you start looking at those use cases, you go, whoa, there people are using it for all sorts of things. And that's just inside an organization. Then you start looking across a community and you go, oh my gosh, there are all these patterns that are out there. There are all these forms of things that are there. There's all the extensions. There's all the things. And one of the things that I came across in that process, I was like, I didn't know I could use Postgres for that. Yeah. I didn't think about using Postgres for that. And I kind of felt almost stupid. I was like, why didn't I know about that? That's so obvious. Once you say it, like I never would have thought about using Postgres in the ways that Tembo has articulated for data warehousing solutions and kind of microcube kind of environments, or some of the stuff that's kind of going on with PG Vector for vector databases. Until you're exposed to that, you go, really? Oh, I thought I had to go with the most recent, thing that I'm seeing on TechCrunch or some place like where somebody's tweeting about it or kind of getting a lot of it, taking a lot of oxygen around a specific technology rather than this very durable tech that you have there. And then you pull on that and you go, why is that the case that there's so much? It's because it's such a solid foundational layer that everyone trusts and understands Postgres. It's really well vetted by the community. And then you say, okay, well, what do we need as technologists to have this go even further? Do we need just say sort of a proprietary system that is like Postgres-esque, not true Postgres, Postgres-like kind of version? Or is it true Postgres that we know how to use and a way that empowers developers to take this and go do more things?
Yeah.
And for me, that force multiplier that Postgres has and that Tembo is enabling, that is a force multiplying effect that allows developers to go faster, service more types of applications, have better management, security, and observability along with it for the management on the DevOps side, all the way through reliability of pick your number of nines here.
Yeah.
All the way out. That is really what I think becomes fundamentally exciting, that is unique, that Tembo is taking on.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Anything?
I would just add something that when I was with Oracle, I know we used to focus on Sybase, Informix, SQL Server from Microsoft. Those were the chief commercial competitors, but I always thought Postgres was a competitor. I always looked at it as a competitor because of its capability. It always had great capabilities. It didn't have an ability to assemble all that into a real commercial competitor.
Right.
So we didn't really have to focus on it so much as you can get salespeople to focus. But anytime that there was not a developer using our database, it was a competitor. You're using someone else's data. Even DB2, sometimes I thought of as a competitor, but certainly Postgres. I even went to see Michael Stonebreaker one time. I said, I want to understand where this is going. I didn't understand open source very well back then. It was my first software company. Oracle was my first software company. I sat down and talked to Michael about it. And we actually co-invested when I was a clienter in a new database that was a columnar database that HP ended up buying. But, I've always thought of it as a very capable dog's breakfast, that it just, could not be put together into a meal. So you could use bits and pieces and get good capability, but you had to be the manager, the owner of the use case.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that a lot. That, I think one of the reasons we have so many data tools, so many great data tools, by the way, is lots of VC is pouring money into it. But then the GTM, the go-to-market talent at these companies is amazing as well. And it's like, a lot of companies have no defense over getting Confluent into their company, or, you're going to use Kafka because the sales reps are greater than whoever you have defending your pocketbook, But it seems to me like competition is much worse here in 2024. I should say much more fierce in 2024 than it could have been back then. But at the same time, back then you had like you were fighting with a lot of people about the same size as you, or it wasn't like as stratified perhaps as it is now, where we've got we're fighting with other like Series A, Series B type startups, but there's also Amazon out there, and like the size difference is startling. Any thoughts on like competitive dynamics now versus your time at Oracle, for example? Like where would you rather be building a company, now or then, I guess, in the database world?
I think it's tough to compare time frames. I think it really depends upon you rising above the din that's out there about databases. And Oracle was not a special database. It was not so much the product, especially if you look at Oracle versions up to 7.1. So Oracle 6 was not a programmable database.
Yeah.
Sybase had triggers and stored procedures and everything, and they were just killing us, especially in Wall Street and banks, financial services. And they were thought to be a better product and a better company. Well, why did Oracle win? It was a better led company. And I'm not talking about myself. Larry was a huge competitor. I mean, he set up the competitive dynamics so well. I don't even remember in the 80s, long before I got to Oracle, there were these ads about Oracle having an F-16 fighting a biplane, which was Sybase. And just would convince people that Oracle had all this capability when it really didn't in the product. Secondly, Oracle Salesforce was just the best in the industry. Yeah. The best in the industry. These were caged taggers that were just amazing. The reputation still exists today for Oracle's amazing abilities in its Salesforce and its marketing. And
people forget like that Salesforce, most of Salesforce's team actually originated out of the teams that Ray built.
Yeah, no, that Salesforce was amazing, and it took the company a long way. We had to cover up a lot of problems, a lot of issues, a lot of inferiority we had competitively, and so it's not always about the product. It's about how well you get the idea of your product across, and the value proposition of it, and people have to try it and like it, and then you get big enough that a Salesforce has to explain that because you're selling bigger deals. For a $5 credit card swipe is not a problem.
Yeah, that's great. That's great context. Well, go ahead.
Something that might be helpful to think about also is one of the things I think that we see now is that there's so many technical solutions. You can't do a bake-off like you used to be able to do. Like before, you'd be like, oh, okay, let's try. And, we've had different versions, like Sybase, Oracle. We might do Vertica versus Teradata. Pick you're like, nowadays you're like, whoa, there's a lot of choice out there. And one of the things I think we've seen with that is where have technologists had experience in usage of these technologies. And if it's something like brand new that no one has really used, it oftentimes isn't fully baked enough to go into the operational environment. Kafka took, I think, 4 years before it really was fully trusted inside LinkedIn by the operations team as like a true, well built out pattern. Took a little while longer to get it you kind of saw it in pockets of places around inside companies. But the other thing that's there is you like if you were going in previously, suppose you wanted something very lightweight or Oracle, like there's nothing really in between. Like there wasn't a whole lot of stuff, and you kind of have that similar version today. If you want to do message passing, really, you're like, really, you want to bring in Kafka right away? That's a heavy solution. And so what you want is something that can have a dial gradation. Now, maybe that, and I believe that is where Tembo really fits in, is it allows you to dial that up so that you're kind of moving up that in that level of sophistication. Maybe eventually you're going to replace it with a very, very specialized technology. But up until that point, the cost overhead to manage that inside an operational environment is so significant. Yeah. People forget to bake that into the overall operational, not only expense time of it, but time, energy that goes into managing a tech stack.
Well, you also have like the cost of moving the data, not just dollars, but time too. There's like anytime you move data, you can't really expect it's going to get there in 6 seconds. If it might normally get there in 6 seconds, but you're like, let's wait 5 minutes to expect it to be there. And then you keep adding these movements up, and now all of a sudden all your data is delayed, and it's like, let's just look at yesterday's data, and then you just get more and more padding, which I think is, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a huge problem, but there are a lot of real time use cases. For example, let's say you're implementing an LLM, and you're asking about something that just happened today in your data, and like you don't have access to it yet. Like that LLM is not nearly as useful because most questions will be about things right now versus, historical. So,
I think the way I think about early stage companies, and you could actually probably go back to when Oracle was your size. And you say, okay, why did Oracle end up where they ended up, even in the first iteration when they could go public, and the second iteration where they turned it around and came back? And I think it is, and I give this advice to every CEO, sell the idea of your company, not the product of your company. So what is the idea of your company? And it turns into be the value proposition for the buyer. And the idea of Oracle was to use a relational database for departmental computing to get around the CIO's, heavyweight. You have to wait in line 2 years if you want that application built because I own all the resources, and it's going to be on a mainframe. So they make all the decisions about, and the user felt, the business user would stand in line and just take that as an answer. Oracle provided a way to build an application on an HP 3000, on a DEC PDP, and you could actually be in business in a much shorter period of time. That's the idea of Oracle, and what took it, that was its initial success. So I think you have much the same thing going on at Tembo, is you have an idea of how to make things much more flexible, how to take advantage of all these extensions, how to, to have stacks for specific uses, for specific use cases. And that gives the developer a lot of leeway, a lot of flexibility, with a lot of capability built in Postgres.
Yeah.
There's one way to think about it, I think, is one definition of trust that I like is trust is consistency over time. And so how do you trust the technology? You can trust because of what people are talking about, what people are saying, or you kind of like, hey, look, have people been banging on this thing long enough for you to really have confidence in it? And we know, like, Postgres, it's like one of probably the most beat up system out there. Like, people are doing security vulnerability tests. People are testing it out around different SLAs, all these things. So we really understand what this technology is and the different ways it can be utilized. And so when you think about that aspect of trust and the ability for it to kind of go in and be utilized, what you want is time to implementation of a solution and a pattern. And that is really what I would encourage developers or architects also to be thinking about, is like, I think of it as in two buckets, like that time to service and we have n amount of calories inside an organization. And, that's hours, minutes, however you want to call this. It's like we have n amount of calories. How do we want to divvy up those calories to supporting it? Do I need a bunch of people managing this thing? Do I want to buy a solution, but I have somebody else? Do I want to buy services? What are those things? And at the end of the day, what I want is efficiency so that I can then also get this turn the crank motion to get the product out there so I can iterate, because otherwise I can't build it up. It's like they do the easiest of hard things. I don't want to implement technology for technology's sake. I want to figure out what product is going to work.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Well, I was going to, we've been going for a while here. I was going to ask a few kind of wrap-up questions. Curious, like I was going to say, in the world of data, do you have any opinions that you feel like almost nobody agrees with you about? This could be data, it could be business, I suppose, if you can't think of a good data. I don't know. I'm a big contrarian. I love hearing other people express contrarian views, but can you think of anything off the top of your head where you're sort of a contrarian thinker to a lot of the people you hear or are talking to?
Boy, I feel like between Ray and me and our partners, we're debating all the time.
Yeah.
Like open source model, LLMs for closed source models to other things. So there's so much, things are changing so fast. It's one of the reasons I came to GreatPoint Ventures, is that lively engagement around these things and the concurrent thinking. Maybe one that I'll just highlight that I've been highlighting more and more, or coming more and more convinced to, is everyone's really aggressive on the LLM journey, the generative AI journey. And I keep thinking about what are the Maslow's hierarchy here for these systems to work. And it kind of comes down to a couple things. The first being, if you don't have your data shop in order, you really can't do much anyway. So do you have good data hygiene? Two, do you have a data-driven culture? And Hillary Mason and I wrote a book on this that I've been building. What does it really look like to have a data-driven culture? And then third, do you have people actually have a product where you're going to actually utilize this tech, or is it just tech for the sense of tech? Because you need that iterative cycle to keep going before to figure it out, like what that technology is going to look like, the product cycle is going to look like, rather than just building tech in one direction and then realize, oh crap, we got to rewind. But the whole org is like, but we already did so much there. We don't want to turn the car around and go another way.
Yeah. Ray, can you think of anything?
I think I've already said it, and that's the best way to think about scaling a company is to not think about scaling, is to kind of think about the very important team that surrounds you and make sure that team is able to scale and think in a scaled manner that's matched to the mission that you're trying to accomplish. If you may have a goal of getting to $50 million in revenue, the CEO that wants to get to $1 billion in revenue doesn't think about his team much differently, and the things you have to do, and the motivational things, and owning the strategy, owning the value proposition. Having people really, really like the company's, value is, I think, what is the most important. In terms of data, I've seen databases come and go. They've all had their pros and cons. I think we should have learned by now, don't pour cement around it. Don't pour cement around your decisions around the database. I know a lot of people that are using databases that were created in the 60s, and they'll just die with them. They'll just stick with them and say it's the best database. Probably is for the purpose that they're using it for, but that doesn't mean it's good for the company.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think my kind of contrarian view on that I think of is, it feels very much like back to the early 90s. You'd have all your data in a closet, in a small business, let's say. Your data was in a closet on-prem, literally on-prem, not even in a data center because those didn't really quite exist yet. And I'm just feeling like it would be cool for a company, like even a company Tembo size. Like we're already using 10 different SaaSes and we have lots of databases, and obviously we're using Postgres for everything. But like the world's just trying to get you to spread your data out, like just like smear it as thin as possible. And it just seems like there's so much value to have it be not smeared, and all very close together and fast. And it's like, again, like we're definitely fighting against the tide on that vision because there's so many sales reps, basically you're fighting with every vendor, who's trying to sell software or anything data related is like suddenly your enemy. So, but I still think like, I'm going to stand by that vision because it's enabling for, like you said, for LLM use, for just analytics, everything.
Yeah, I think you have one leg up, and that is the fact that you bet on Postgres, and for all the reasons DJ cited, you've cited that you're betting on something that already has a huge favorable user base. And I've seen a number of database companies separate their buyers from their users. And I think it's a huge mistake. Even Oracle did that. I brought that back together and I said, we've got it. All our executives must spend time with the user groups and understand what they like, what they don't like, and not be bothered by them because they don't write checks. So
yeah, we were talking about like outbound. I'm really excited for the day where we like talk to an executive, convince them on the value of our vision of like getting all your data together using Postgres for that. And then they take it down to their developer who says, I've been trying to get you to use Postgres for years. Like, what the heck? This is your idea now? So that's my fantasy scenario, to have some developer say, thank you, Right. But yeah, that's great.
I think as long as you're on the side of the community, at the stage, you have like, whether you call them the user, the community, the people who actually hands-on keys, as long as you're building and giving them superpowers, just like the same way like Ray's talking about, we've seen the same version where somebody's controlled something and prevented other people from doing their job. The CIO controlling the resources previously.
Oh, yeah.
Or with the data warehouse, the data warehouse being locked away and you were in line to run your SQL query. And like the resource management, now we're seeing that version like on GPUs. Like, as long as you're helping people get their job done and be able to iterate, then I think you're building superpowers for them. Then you're always got the advantages on your side. Otherwise, then it's just marketing hype. But I think that can carry you for a round or two, but it's going to catch up. It always catches up on you, and because people just can't tolerate it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, but this has been an amazing time to chat with you guys, and I learned a little bit more about your backgrounds that I didn't know before. So I appreciate spending time talking about Postgres with us, and maybe we'll have you on again here as we go through our journey and get into other messes that all startups find themselves in.
I'm just excited to be along on the journey.
Yeah, right. Yes. We're really happy to be part of the company. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.